Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Shadow Radio Wednesdays. I am your host, Justin Gerald of Shadow Chasers Investigation, and I am joined by my co-host, Wendy, who is also co-host of Mystic Moon Cafe Radio with Seth Michael. Wendy, you there?
Yep, I am here, Justin.
And how are you tonight?
Doing all right. How are you doing out there in the nasty heat? I know you have about the same thing we do here in Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm just sitting out here in Indiana in the middle of a cornfield in the hot and humid weather and trying to stay cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I am very excited tonight because we have a special guest on tonight. You want to tell us about him?
Well, sure. Tonight we've got Travis Shortt with us. He's probably best known for the Dark Wing, the Mothman Chronicles. Let me see. Let me full-size my notes. He's been interested in the paranormal, supernatural, and occult since a very young age. He began his broadcasting career working in radio as an on-air personality. He worked for the Department of Media Studies and began learning video production while in college, working towards his degree in communications at the University of Virginia Wise campus. He and longtime friend Charlie McCracken worked at Digital Edge Productions before breaking off and forming Black River Productions, where they provided media consulting and production services to a variety of clients. Travis went to assist another friend in '07 at an acute care facility. He got it all back up and running and on the right track, and then he returned to Black River in '09. In 2010, he rebranded Black River and started the groundwork for what is now Aspire Communications. He's also the host, narrator, producer, researcher, and writer of Dark Wings, the Mothman Chronicles. Let's see, there we go. There we go.
Under the commander's moon, strange bird from a different nest, flying low, got my collar.
Hi, Travis. Are you with us?
You found the song I was talking about.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we're very good at that. You name a song, and we're going to keep trying to find it until we do. So
that's awesome. Thank you, guys. That's great.
Absolutely.
So
it's dogged
how are you
determination.
tonight, Travis?
I am great. Thank you guys so much for having me on the show. It's been great getting to know you guys over the past couple of days as we've communicated, and it's great to have the opportunity to come on the program and discuss a project that my business partners and I sunk about 6 years of our lives into, and getting this documentary film created and out there. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you for coming on.
No problem. So tell us a little bit more about the documentary.
This documentary started out in 2003, and quite frankly, it really started out as more of a hobby and a side venture for Charlie McCracken and myself. We were shooting a marketing film for a small college in Ashland, Kentucky, in 2003, and we stopped at a gas station to fill up with gas and get some snacks for the road trip back to Virginia, which was about a 2.5 hour drive. And Charlie picked up a road map, and we started looking, and we realized that being in Ashland, Kentucky, we were about 90 miles from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is where the original sightings of the Mothman occurred back between 1966 and 1967. We had heard about the Mothman a couple of years before, around 2000, 2001, when we were at Area 51. We stopped by the Area 51 Research Center there in Rachel, Nevada, picked up a book by Jerome Clark, which outlined 360 different paranormal and supernatural stories from across the country, and one of those was about the Mothman sightings of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Growing up in the mountains of southwest Virginia, the southwestern portion of the state of Virginia, we were surprised that we'd never heard about this. So we kind of filed it away in the back of our minds, and when we saw this on the road map that we were that close, we decided to extend our road trip there from Ashland, Kentucky, and drive up to Point Pleasant. And we started talking with some of the locals, and we discovered that there was really a story here that had not been told. And we laid the groundwork. We started going back. We would take trips to Point Pleasant about twice a month. We would drive up. We would stay for a couple of days. We would interview people. We went to the various locations, did a lot of research over those 6 years. We were at the local newspaper there on a regular basis, going through the morgue and pulling up the actual news stories of things that had happened, what had transpired in 66 and 67. What we put together is a snapshot for individuals that are interested in the Mothman mythology, going back to 1774 with the supposed Native American curse placed on the land by Chief Cornstalk, and running through the present day, and the town actually having a Mothman Festival now every year. The third weekend in September, there's a 2-day event where people will come from all over the world and tour the area, go to the Mothman Museum, have their picture taken with the Mothman statue. And it really was just kind of this very enlightening story about this great tragedy that happened with the sighting of the Mothman, the collapse of the Silver Bridge 13 months later. What had happened in this area in the past 40 years, how the lives had been impacted, and what the town was doing to actually try to regenerate itself. So it's a very interesting type of documentary. We do not speculate in the documentary film about what Mothman was. We simply give the audience the opportunity to hear the history and to actually hear firsthand from the voice of the actual eyewitnesses, and we do them in long takes. There's no editing in the interviews. It's all long scenes of both individuals on camera, me asking a question, and the eyewitness giving their response, so that it literally is their story verbatim without us editing it to make it fit any agenda that we may have had.
Very nice.
That's pretty amazing. You know, I heard of Mothman probably a few years ago when I used to watch Paranormal State, and they went out there and they did an investigation because I guess that was like a really big thing for Ryan. He really wanted to go and investigate the Mothman, and that was the only time I really heard about Mothman or exactly what happened when that bridge collapsed. What was did they find out what the actual cause was for the bridge to collapse?
There was an official finding by some engineers who took a look at the actual remnants of the bridge, and it was basically a stress fracture in one of the I-beams that was holding the bridge up, and that this bridge was only 40 years old when it collapsed. And at the time when the Silver Bridge collapsed, it spanned the Ohio River connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio. At that time, it was one of the greatest disasters on U.S. soil. It claimed 46 lives in the time span of just a few minutes from when the bridge collapsed, and it literally dumped all of these cars that were parked on the bridge. And if anyone has seen the movie The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere and Laura Linney, they did a very good job of recreating that one event, because what happened on December 15th, 1967, the red lights at either end of the bridge froze on red. So both lanes of traffic were at a standstill at rush hour, 10 days before Christmas. And shortly after 5 o'clock on December 15th, that bridge snapped. And it literally, when the I-bar broke, it literally, that suspension bridge acted almost like a snake. It began undulating up and down, making waves. And then all the other supports snapped as well, and the entire thing just fell into the Ohio River.
Good heavens.
All those 46 lives, there were 2 that were never found.
Really?
Really.
Man, that's just amazing. I can't imagine if I were in a situation like that. I mean, I imagine all of them probably thought, well, this is it. I mean, that's what I would have thought. But the report said that people saw Mothman by the bridge or over the bridge moments before it happened.
There are basically two varying accounts. One is that shortly before the bridge collapsed, someone saw Mothman supposedly flying over the bridge. Another account says that the day before the collapse, what would be described today as men in black were seen underneath the bridge, almost inspecting, looking for something, possibly doing something, and then driving away. So you have these two variations on the story. There was, according to many eyewitnesses, what was a sonic boom that was heard just seconds before the bridge collapsed.
Interesting.
So a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of conspiracy theories that have surfaced in the past 4 decades as to what caused the collapse of this bridge. Like I said, the bridge was only 40 years old. It was only about 40 years old. It was built in 1927, I believe. So it wasn't a very old bridge. But one of the interesting things about this collapse was, while it was literally a national tragedy, it did spawn something very positive, and that was that the U.S. government decided at that point that all bridges had to be inspected to make sure that something like this would not happen again. So there was a massive infrastructure investigation overhaul by the U.S. government and the Department of Transportation and Highways.
Wow, that's really, and then it started a whole big movement on the safety of bridges. That's cool. I mean,
absolutely.
It's sad, but it's cool.
It's one of those things, it was something that was very negative. It was very negative for that region, for the town of Point Pleasant, because...
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me, Wendy?
I can hear you, but Travis went away. Travis? Oh, he dropped. I'm sure he'll call right back in. Probably that lightning storm. Travis is experiencing a lightning storm out in West Virginia, out in the mountains of West Virginia. So
yeah, I'm sure he'll call back in.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
This was like maybe a month ago. I was actually watching a documentary on bridges and how they need to be maintained, and some bridges a lot of our bridges are just so old, and I guess there's a rating for all the bridges in the United States, and I guess almost every one of our bridges has a D rating. And they just maintain that D rating because they're so expensive to maintain or repair.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got him back. Hello, Travis?
Hey, guys. So I apologize. I told you we had some bad storms moving through here in Virginia. I think it's wreaking havoc with the phones.
Oh, yes. We figured that was probably it.
So I apologize. But yeah, I mean, it was something very negative for the town, but it did turn out to be something very positive nationwide. They did inspect the bridges and start ensuring a greater degree of safety and maintenance and upkeep to try to ensure that something like this did not happen again.
Right. Yeah. I was just saying, while you were out, that I was watching a documentary on bridges and the maintenance of all the bridges in the United States, and that most of the bridges in the United States have like a D rating because they're just so expensive to maintain, and that they got to constantly do repairs to those ginormous bridges because they can oxidize and rust so easily and so fast.
Absolutely, and the thing about the Silver Bridge there in Point Pleasant was it was one of the first suspension bridge types that had been built in the U.S. It had a sister bridge about 20, 30 miles up the Ohio River in the town of St. Mary's, Ohio. That was very similar, and it was actually the first bridge shut down after the collapse of the Silver Bridge. They immediately shut that bridge down and did a thorough investigation and inspection to make sure that it was still up to speed.
Right, and, that makes sense, because it's like an identical bridge, and they were probably built around the same time or not too long after?
Yeah, not long after. And one of the things that really didn't come into play in the minds of the engineers when they built the bridge is, you're talking about in the 1927, cars were built very differently than they were in 1967.
Yeah.
The weight
Much
of cars
heavier.
they'd actually increased about a ton and a half per car.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have red lights that have, are frozen on both ends, and you have dozens of cars all weighing 2 to 3 tons when they used to weigh a ton, you've got a lot more weight just sitting there, which does give credence to a rational and reasonable explanation for the collapse of the bridge. That does not keep individuals, of course, from speculating about the supernatural and the paranormal aspects of the collapse of the bridge.
Sure. We actually had something similar here in Kansas City. It's been probably, I'm going to say 10 years ago, but one of the main bridges across the Missouri River, the Paseo Bridge, one of its girders cracked or failed, and it dropped. It didn't drop anything, but it split, and there was a 3-foot gap from one height to the next height, which what was used to be. Excuse me, I'm not doing very well. It used to be just a regular road, and they attributed that to pigeon poop.
Yes, I remember that. Actually, we had thought about including when we did the documentary, when we did the final edit. It was about a 4.5-hour long documentary. We are not Peter Jackson. I don't think we could get anyone to sit through a 4.5-hour documentary film. So we actually ended up cutting a lot of stuff out of that documentary. But we did look at bringing that in because there were some similarities to the collapse of the Silver Bridge and what was happening around the same. It was around the same time. It was almost an anniversary date for the collapse of the Silver Bridge. There were lots of things that we had thought about including, but I remember the collapse of that bridge very well.
Okay, so you said before that one of the reports was that there were some men in black reported underneath the bridge. What's the backstory to that? Like, is there a theory as to who the men in black were, or what they were doing, or why, or anything like that?
Well, I'll tell you, I told Wendy something today. Point Pleasant, West Virginia is a very interesting town. I consider it the Las Vegas of paranormal activity. Meaning you can go there and exactly, because when John Keel, who wrote The Mothman Prophecies, the book that the movie was based on, when he went to Point Pleasant, he didn't go because of any of the stories on Mothman. He went because of UFO sightings. So he was there investigating UFO sightings, and with the UFO sightings also came animal mutilations, sightings of men in black. There were numerous haunted locations in and around the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And then you've got the Mothman who starts making this appearance. So there's all of these things manifesting itself in a town at the time of no more than 5,000-6,000 people. So it literally is this doorway, this hotspot of supernatural and paranormal activity. And the Men in Black had a very strong presence in the town of Point Pleasant in and around the time that Mothman was being seen, these UFO sightings were taking place. But also, one of the things that our film crew found very intriguing was talking to some of the old-timers, the older gentlemen, and even some women in the area. Mothman was sighted at what is called the TNT area, and it's literally and officially the McClintock Wildlife Preserve, but it's called the TNT area because in the 1940s it's a piece of land that the U.S. government took over and built a facility there for the manufacturing and storing of trinitrotoluene, or TNT, and other explosives that were being used by the U.S. military during World War II.
Right.
By the 1960s, it had been abandoned. It was no longer active. It had been basically reclaimed by nature, but it was a hangout for local teenagers. Well, in our investigation and talking to some of these people, we found a very interesting story, and that the individuals who were contracted to help build this facility, they were picked up at their homes on a school bus with blacked-out windows. They were driven to the TNT area. They were driven into a garage, a hangar-type area. The door was closed. They exited the bus. They got out of their civilian clothes, put on their work clothes. They got back on the bus, and then they were driven over hundreds of acres and dropped at different locations to perform their tasks. They were picked up at the end of the day, brought back to the hangar, put on their civilian clothes, were dropped off at home, never having seen where they were going or having any knowledge of where people were working at the TNT area. What we discovered is that the government engineering group that built that facility left Point Pleasant and then went to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and built the nuclear facility there. And then they are also credited with building Groom Lake at Area 51 outside of Las Vegas and Rachel, Nevada. So the town of Point Pleasant has a very interesting government tie.
Goodness. It sounds a lot like Grandpa working at Bendix here in Kansas City during no, it was actually after. But nobody knew what the other person was building, and it was all top secret government stuff. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's the same type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this government tie between the town of Point Pleasant. There were, as I mentioned, numerous occasions where individuals had interactions with very strange individuals, often dressed in black or dark clothing. Keel described them as being Middle Eastern-looking, African-American, to some degree, certain African-American features, very long fingers. Many times they would speak in very lilted tones. They were very interested in time. They were very interested in what year it was, what era it was. They were also fascinated by the most mundane objects, click pens, pencil sharpeners, scissors, glue sticks, things like that. They would actually, when they were talking to individuals in their offices, they would actually pick them up, steal them, and pocket them, and walk away with them.
Oh my!
So,
wow.
So are we talking about like possible aliens or possible time travelers?
Well, and again, Keel never really says anything, and quite frankly, we never interacted with any MIBs. We did have one experience on a drive back one night that I think very loosely could be considered an MIB encounter. There were three of us. It was myself, Charlie McCracken, and Matthew Fleming. Matthew served as the producer alongside myself. Charlie was the director. We were driving back from Point Pleasant, which is about a 3.5-hour, 4-hour drive to where we reside in Virginia, and we were on a highway, not an interstate, but a 4-lane highway, not traveled late at night, early morning. There weren't a lot of cars on the road, and all of a sudden, in the rearview mirror, we get bright lighted, and there's this car that follows us with its bright lights on for a little while. Then it passes us and zooms in front of us, and a few miles down the road, without ever passing another automobile. Same thing happens again. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's bright lights in the rearview mirror. They follow like that for, a few minutes, and then they zoom off in front of us. That happens 3 times on the road. Never had that happen before, haven't had it happen since. I've read accounts of where, MIBs will often do that as a means of intimidation and things like that. So I don't really know if that's what that was or not. It was disconcerting and unnerving. At 3 o'clock in the morning, be driving along on a fairly deserted highway to have that happen. But Keel doesn't make any suggestions or give any type of theories as to what the MIBs were. There's some very interesting other things that also happen. For one thing, that the MIBs in Point Pleasant, and I stress only the ones that Keel talks about in Point Pleasant, had an aversion to religious iconography. You could flash a crucifix at them and they would turn and run. They would not enter a home that had any religious iconography. There were a couple of individuals that these men in black were, according to Keel and some other accounts, very interested in some newborn babies that had been born in the town of Point Pleasant. And Keel specifically told them that they needed to hang a golden crucifix above the crib to ensure that these MIBs would not come near their children. I mean, that's
just quote. Freaky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's directly taken from Keel's book.
That sounds like an occult or possible demonic type stuff.
Well, and again, that's another thing that was happening in the town of Point Pleasant. There were numerous accounts back in the 60s, and even when we were there between 2003 and 2009, we were told not to go to the TNT area to investigate and film during the one night during the month of October, because we would run into a coven of Satanists and witches, and that they were performing sacrifices and doing all these things out there in that area.
Oh, lovely. Just what you want to run into in the middle of nowhere at late at night.
Absolutely. Again, it's one of those things, you're talking about a small town in the middle of nowhere, and all of this stuff seems to be going on and generating all of this media frenzy. I mean, literally, in 1967, the town of Point Pleasant was literally in every newspaper around the world.
Interesting.
They were talking about the collapse of the bridge. They were talking about this tragedy. And then, to a smaller degree, they were talking about, these teenagers who had seen something on November 15th, 1966. So it's a very interesting little town. I encourage everyone to go. As a matter of fact, they're having the Mothman Festival the third weekend in September. It's a great place to get away to. There will be about 10,000 people that will descend on the town from everywhere in the world. We have met people from Australia, from Japan, from Germany, from the Netherlands, from Ireland, from Scotland, from the UK, from Italy. I mean, they just come from all over for this 2-day event. Mm-hmm. And it's, you get to speak to the eyewitnesses. There's a series of lectures. For 4 years, I spoke on the religious and spiritual implications of the Mothman sightings. This year, one of my clients, Bill Bean, who is the author of Dark Force and Delivered, he's speaking on Saturday night. He's going to be the keynote speaker. Most of the speakers take place on Sunday. They decided to add a slot this year at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Bill Bean will be the keynote speaker. And then after that, there's a battle of the bands, and then all the other speakers start around noon on Sunday.
Man, that place just sounds like the place to be if you're into the paranormal.
Oh, it is. It's fascinating.
Because it could be it could be spirits, it could be demons, it could be angels, it could be UFOs, it could, who knows? It looks like there are just so many theories about that area, and it's almost impossible to narrow them all down. And as far as humans go, as a race, we try to figure out how stuff works. We try to figure out how things, just basically we just try to figure out about life and life around us and everything. And to me, it just seems like it's just something that nobody's willing to let go of, forget about. It seems like just everybody wants answers for that area. Do you ever think that that the mystery of that town will ever be solved?
I honestly don't know. One of the things that we wanted to do was to take the story to a slightly different level. There have been a lot of pieces done on Mothman going back to the mid-'80s. Unsolved Mysteries did a small segment on Mothman, and then Discovery Channel has done a 15 to 30-minute segment. Animal Planet has done one. Actually, our firm provided a lot of the footage for Animal Planet's Lost Tapes episode on the sightings of Mothman. They used a lot of our graphic animation and some of our recreations. But no one had ever done a feature documentary and actually let the eyewitnesses tell their story. And one of the things that we wanted to try to do was to investigate the long-term psychological and emotional impact that something like this had on individuals and on a town. And by looking at the town, we started looking at the economic ramifications of the collapse of the bridge. So when you watch the documentary, yes, we deal with the supernatural and we deal with the paranormal, but it's all dealt with from the perspective of human understanding, trying to get a grasp on what it was that happened and how can this town that literally, if you were to go to Point Pleasant right now, that town has not changed that much since 1967. There are no chain restaurants. There are no chain hotels. There are no super Walmarts, which I know is hard to believe because they're everywhere. There's nothing like that on the West Virginia side. All of the economic growth took place on the Ohio side.
Very
because
interesting.
Once that bridge collapsed, it was 10 years before its replacement was built. So,
and they had to go 20 miles down the road to cross the river?
20 miles up, 20 miles down. So it was a 40-mile one-way trip.
Oh, my goodness.
So what happened was all of the economic development, all of the grocery stores, all of the restaurants, all of the hotels, all of the gas station chains, all of those things on the Gallipolis, Ohio side. It's only been in the past decade that Point Pleasant has started rallying economically. And a lot of that goes to the credit of Charles Humphreys, Jeff Walmsley, Carolyn Harris, and a bunch of other individuals that started pulling together. They put together the Mothman Festival. Charles Humphrey is the Director of Economic Development. He has done an excellent job of getting grant money to actually look at the history of Point Pleasant. What most people don't understand is that Point Pleasant is now officially recognized as the birthplace of American independence. It is considered to be the first battle of the American Revolutionary War. Lord Dunmore's War, yes, Lord Dunmore's War, which was fought at Camp Point Pleasant in 1774, is now officially considered, even by the Daughters of American Revolution, to be the first battle for American independence.
Wow. Wow, that's neat too. Great history on it.
So there's this huge, rich history tying, American colonials, the British, the Native American tribes, all of that, all tied there at Camp Point Pleasant. There's a huge obelisk that stands at Tuindui Park, and Tuindui is a Wyandot Native American term that means the point between two waters. And it's this public park, and there's this huge obelisk, and it bears the names of all of the individuals from the American military militia at the time that lost their lives at the Battle of Camp Point Pleasant. And it was at that battle that Chief Cornstalk is supposed to have uttered a curse with his dying breath, cursing the land to never find peace. And we trace in the documentary from 1774 all the way up through even 2001, and how that this little town has had so many tragedies and so many things that have gone wrong, how many people have lost their lives, and even to the point of drawing a connection between the town of Point Pleasant and the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001.
Holy cow.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How
did they make that?
Connected?
When we started doing the research into all of the things that happened, we do a timeline from 1774 and the death of Cornstalk, and all of the tragedies that take place in and around Point Pleasant. One of the things that was very interesting to us was that we pulled up the flight path data from the FAA on American Airlines Flight 77. For those that are familiar with 9/11, this is the aircraft that was flown into the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That aircraft, American Airlines Flight 77, was hijacked directly above the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Really?
Yes. It is directly above Point Pleasant where that plane veers and changes course and flies back to Washington, D.C., and flies into the Pentagon.
Holy
Man,
cow.
That place sounds like the Bermuda Triangle on steroids.
Yes, it does.
We have referred to it as that. It literally is a vortex. And Charlie McCracken, my longtime business partner, best friend, and the director of this documentary, has often pointed out that when I said Tuindui, the point between two waters, you have the Ohio River and the Kanawha River both merging in Point Pleasant. And for individuals who study spirituality and energy, the merging of heavy bodies of water does create a certain energy vortex. Mm-hmm. These two rivers merge literally at the point of land that is the beginning point of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And Charlie has said, he swears up and down, that energy created by those two bodies of water has created some type of vortex that has opened some portal, some doorway to allow supernatural and paranormal energy to be literally fixated and heightened in this little town.
Interesting. Can I ask, there's that little town, and they've got Devil's Road. It's where the Mississippi and the Missouri River meet, I believe. Mm-hmm. Correlation or no? What do you think?
It's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the second documentary that we've been working on for the past couple of years is literally exploring explanations and the possible theories as to what Mothman was and what was happening in this town. The first one, it's kind of hard to explain, but with a lot of paranormal activity and supernatural investigations, you still have something physical. There are fuzzy photographs and fuzzy videos of Bigfoot, of the Loch Ness Monster, of UFOs, of poltergeists, things like that. There is yet to be presented from the original sightings in Point Pleasant in 66 and 67 any type of physical representation or physical evidence of the sightings of the Mothman. So we wanted to try to provide that as best we could. So we took the eyewitness accounts from Point Pleasant as well as other locations throughout the world, because there have been sightings in other places. And Charlie McCracken, to his credit, he's an amazing director, but he's also an amazing graphics artist, and he clocked in thousands of man-hours over 6 years of creating a CGI Mothman based on the various eyewitness descriptions. So in our documentary, instead of photographs, which we do use some, not photographs, I'm sorry, but, sketches and artwork by some original artists, by the eyewitnesses, but we actually created a fully animated Mothman that runs, he flies, he walks, he does all of those things, and we tried to recreate as best we could the eyewitness accounts of what he did, so people could get some idea of what these eyewitnesses were seeing.
I remember that. I have seen the show, right? That is the one that I've seen on either Sci-Fi or Chiller or some such, right?
No, actually, we right now it's only available on DVD. We just have begun negotiating with Netflix to try to get it on Netflix within the next couple of months.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
The one that you may have seen is one called The Eyes of the Mothman.
Okay, possibly.
It's another documentary. It was done, I think it was completed about 2 years after we did ours.
Okay. Yep, it probably was then. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We just pride ourselves on being the first feature documentary. Some others have come along and done some things, but we were literally the first feature-length documentary to ever be done on the Mothman.
Okay.
So we pride ourselves in that one fact.
Oh, I'd be proud of that too. That's just amazing, and I think it had to be done too.
It really did, because unfortunately, what had been done, and this was, some people ask me, why did it take 6 years? Well, it took 6 years, number one, because we financed it ourselves. We did it out of pocket. Number two, we were literally meticulous in our historical accuracies. We checked and double-checked and triple-checked all of our facts, because when we started watching a lot of the things that had been done that were 15- and 20-minute pieces that were part of an anthology, on Discovery or History or Travel or something like that, they were getting a lot of the facts wrong. And I don't say that as any type of negative statement about those companies. They did what they had to do. They were doing a short product. Film crews would go in, they would shoot rapidly, and then they were out of there. Most of the time within a day, maybe two. We spent 6 years of going and talking to people and getting the story and the backstory. You'll never talk to any of those other film crews where that they found out about the TNT area being built by the same crew, possibly that built Area 51. You're never going to talk to another film crew that discovered that, Flight 77 was hijacked directly above Point Pleasant, West Virginia. You're never going to find another film crew that spent months talking to Linda Scarberry, the original eyewitness from 1966, and actually have her tell you on camera exactly what she saw, because they didn't care about those things. They went in for the sensational aspect.
Yeah.
They got the story. They did a 15-minute interview. They edited it into 30 seconds, and then they were gone. We stayed and got to know the people and got to know the backstory and got to know the inner workings of not only what people thought they saw, but how it affected them, their families, and that town for 4 generations later. Or not 4 generations, I'm sorry, but 4 decades later.
Now, you see, that's what I like about people that do independent films, or that that do similar things to what you do as far as filming and stuff. I'm a paranormal investigator. My paranormal group, we do a documentary of all of our investigations, and it's just, you see a lot of these movies and a lot of these TV shows, and you know, like let's take for instance, Mothman. With when Paranormal State did it, there was just very, very little facts, and you know they automatically went into the spiritual side, which is okay to a point. But if you're really wanting to understand the story, if you're really wanting to understand exactly what happened, the look and the feel and everything about it, to truly understand it, you really got to do what you did. You know, and I just completely agree with how you did it, and you know, and getting to know the people, and usually when you get to know people, when you interview them enough times and they get to know you, you know, they feel more comfortable, and they might tell you things that they wouldn't tell, say, Discovery, or
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely, and that is one of the things that we did. People have asked me, you know, Linda Scarberry, who unfortunately passed away in 2011, was the original eyewitness, and she had been on numerous TV shows. Everybody and their brother had interviewed her for her story. But it took us about 2 years to get her to talk to us.
Oh, my.
We emailed, we phone called, we talked, and then we met her. And she and her daughter and son-in-law met us at the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant. We talked to her for about an hour, and then we took her back to the location of the original sighting. And it was at this moment that I really started realizing how traumatic this event was, because we're driving. I was driving a Honda Odyssey at the time, a minivan. Charlie was in the passenger seat. I was driving. Linda was in the seat behind me. Her daughter and son-in-law were in the back seat. And I was watching Linda in the rearview mirror. Now, it's about a 10-15-minute drive from Point Pleasant to the TNT area.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie's talking to her. I'm talking. We're driving. But I'm watching her in the rearview mirror. And the closer we get to the TNT, the less responsive she becomes. And she literally starts balding up, bringing her knees up to her chest and wrapping her arms around her knees and almost getting in the fetal position in the seat, in the back seat.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. Yeah.
When we get to the location, we have to coax her out of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. We have to talk her out. And she gets out, and then she's really nervous. And there's actually a scene that's used as a segue scene where you see Linda and I walking kind of the perimeter, and it looks like we're starting the interview or continuing the interview. Actually, what's happening is Charlie was filming us, but I was actually just walking with her, trying to get her to open up and talk, and just to get her comfortable again, just to get her to. And I mean, she's crying. I mean, we're literally. I'm standing there, and it's August in Point Pleasant, and this is a river town. The humidity is like 150%. But during this interview, she is crying, and she's trembling, and she's literally a broken individual. And that's when I came away from this first documentary, that these individuals that saw this entity, this Mothman, their lives were forever altered in a very negative way. These are individuals who had been straight and narrow people, no problems with drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But after seeing this thing, they had drug problems, they had alcohol problems, they had broken marriages, they attempted suicide. All of these things after seeing this.
Goodness.
Yeah, I guess it would just be so traumatizing. It would break somebody.
Pretty much PTSD.
Especially
Absolutely.
from that time period. The time period in which they saw Mothman stuff, people really didn't talk about the paranormal that much. If you said you were being haunted or you're being possessed, you were shunned. Like you weren't allowed to talk about that.
Absolutely. I mean, these people they were ostracized from the very beginning, and I've had people claim, well, they were looking for 15 minutes of fame, and they were trying to. They weren't. From the moment that they offered testimony to the police and filed an official report, they were criticized and ostracized by those in the community. Linda's husband at the time, they divorced a few years after the sightings of the Mothman. Roger Scarberry, we contacted Roger, and we tried to get Roger to sit down with us and let us talk to him and film the interview. And we even sent a contract to him saying that if he would do that for us, if after the interview he did not want the interview to be aired or to be broadcast in any form or fashion, we would turn the tape over to him that day. But we felt that his side of the story needed to be told because we wanted to hear from someone else at the night of the sighting. Roger has still, we started in 2003, this is 2013, he still, for 10 years, has refused to go back on record and talk about that night.
Oh, wow.
He has never, since the official police report in 1967, he has never given an interview or talked about what they saw.
Holy cow.
So basically the people that saw Mothman pretty much thought that it was just pretty much like something demonic or evil or kind of like a bringer of death type of thing.
Harbinger.
Well, when you talk to the eyewitnesses, they'll tell you that it was obviously something like they had never seen before. Now, when you talk to the individuals that research Mothman, and this is where a lot of individuals will stand up against me because my theory is a little bit out there. It's a little bit off the norm. Most people view Mothman as a cryptid, like Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, those types of things. I don't view Mothman as a cryptid at all. I believe that Mothman was the manifestation of a demonic entity. I believe from my own theological training and the things that I have studied, after talking to eyewitnesses, knowing what was going on in the town of Point Pleasant, and hearing what was taking place when Mothman was being seen, the fact that when they would look at this entity in those glowing red eyes, they had a sense of losing themselves, of losing control of themselves and being drawn toward this entity. That tells me that this is something that is malevolent, and it very much has the telltale signs of a demonic entity. Especially when you hear Linda Scarberry tell you exactly what she saw that night, because the name Mothman is very misgiving. That was a term coined by a journalist in the area, and there was the height of the Batman TV series, and there was a villain in the Batman mythology that was called the Mothman. And when the individuals saw this entity and started reporting it to the police, this journalist coined that term, and it stuck, as often happens with journalists. But the fact of the matter is, Linda Scarberry's official report of what she saw was a tall, 7 to 9 foot tall, slender, yet muscular man, ashen in color, with wings like an angel and glowing red eyes.
There's a question in the chat room if it could be attributed to the angel of death.
It is very possible. We have posed that theory. That could this have been the angel of death there? Could he have been there to claim the souls of the 46 people that were lost in the collapse of the bridge? We look at in the second documentary that we've been working on. What we look at is the appearance of these winged entities throughout cultures and religions. They exist in Judeo-Christianity and Islam and the Mesoamerican cultures of the Mayans and the Aztecs, in Hinduism, in Egypt and Sumeria and Babylon. There are always these depictions of entities that have wings, that manifest themselves, that disappear, that cause great terror and horror in the lives of those individuals that see them. So the plan in the second one is to actually get experts from those various cultures and religions to sit and talk about what it means that in 2013 we're still talking about those things, and that these entities, and I do call them entities, not creatures, not cryptids, these entities still continue to manifest themselves and show themselves. And what does that mean for our culture? And what does that mean? Even looking at it from a psychological standpoint, from the Carl Jungian aspect of the great archetypes, is this something that is just ingrained in our psyche and that we're continuing to project it? Or are these things real? And if they are real, what are they? Are they angels? Are they demons? Are they, as John Keel postulated, ultra-terrestrials? beings that exist in a slightly higher dimension that sometimes we are able to see them?
That's a very good question. My goodness. I'm thinking harpies hopped into my mind, so I'm going to say they're harpies. How's that sound?
That works,
Yeah.
There's no definitive answer, unfortunately.
Right.
Or maybe fortunately. I mean, that's one of the great things about looking at things in the supernatural and the paranormal is there's no dead ends. There's no closed doors. The theories abound, and Justin was talking about being a paranormal investigator. I've been asked before, do I consider myself that? I don't. If I were to coin a term for myself in this vein, of course, by day I'm a publicist and a PR consultant, but in this regard, I would consider myself a parajournalist. I like to look at events from an objective and journalistic standpoint. I want to ask questions, and I want to try to find answers. It doesn't mean that I go on investigations. It doesn't mean that I am out there on a regular basis looking for these things, but occasionally there's something that will pop up that will capture my interest, and I want to research it and ask questions and try to find an answer for that one particular scenario.
I can tell you, as a paranormal investigator, if I were to take on a case like that, if I were to take on the Mothman case to try to figure out what it is or whatever, going into that case, just hearing everything that you've told me and everything I've heard in the past, I'd be going in it thinking, okay, this could possibly be a demonic type case. Especially after, you said you talked to all these eyewitnesses and they're getting all scared and they're telling you basically what they saw, and basically what they felt, and looking at all the tragedies. I mean, without experiencing it myself, or without, just putting aside gathering evidence and everything during any type of investigation that I might do, I would look at it as, okay, this could possibly be demonic. I mean, that's what I would think going in.
And I wish that I had that foresight myself when we started the process, and we as an investigative team might have been able to protect ourselves a little better, because we did have some very negative things that happened to each of us in the course of producing the documentary. And I wish that I had that knowledge. I've been asked on several occasions, would I do this again? Would I go back? I would still do it again, but I would approach it from a very different perspective, because in all honesty, when we started the process, it was nothing more than an urban legend and a story that we were interested in, and it wasn't until we got too far into it that we realized it was very real.
Nikki has a question in the chat room again. If you believe that energy, either good or bad, can manifest itself, think of all the negativity that surrounds our world, and then could our negative energy have brought forth something like this?
Very possible. And I agree with that 100%. I think that anytime energy is focused, whether it be positive or negative, there is a physical manifestation. I've seen it myself in religious circles with faith healing. It has to be the belief of the person, not necessarily the person who is the quote-unquote faith healer, but there is something real to the channeled, focused manifestation of energy. And if you are focusing that, and other people are focusing that, and it's amazing what can happen in both a positive and a negative way. And I have over the past few years become a huge believer in speaking things into existence. I think the more that you talk about something, the more you deal with it, the more you say negative things happen. The more you say positive things happen.
Empower them with your energies.
Absolutely.
Yep, Nikki's agreeing. Yeah. She says right on.
Yeah. Actually, I did a case that is similar to that. My team had somebody contacted our team, and they said that their children were seeing spirits in the home, and they were being touched or pinched or whatever and being bothered. And we go and we do a walkthrough of this home, And, we're doing our EMF sweeps. We're talking with the parents. We didn't involve the children. We never do that. We did have somebody talk with the children to see what they said, to get their accounts. We got to be really careful when the children, are 5 years or younger, which pretty much, all of these children were, 5 years or younger. But anyways, we're walking around and they're telling us, okay, well, this happened here and this happened over here, and these parents were really frightened. And what it ended up being was we did the investigation. We didn't pick up anything, nothing at all. The children weren't home. The parents weren't home. We did the investigation. Nothing was there. They come home the next day, and what do you know? The activity's happening again. We go out there again, and there's nothing going on. And basically, I put a lot of thought into it, and I look, I'm looking at the interactions between the parents and the children, and I came to the conclusion that they were projecting the fear, the energy, the fear, and it was manifesting in the house. So it wasn't a spirit, it was the fear factor. The parents were getting scared for the kids because the kids are scared of the boogeyman, or how children will be scared over nothing, and so all of that will just condense and manifest and make things happen. And basically, that's what we came to the conclusion of, and we said, well, the first thing you have to do is keep your children calm. Don't feed into it. If the children are saying, "Oh, I'm, I see the spirit," or I hear that, whatever they're seeing, whatever they're hearing, you do not get scared in front of them. Don't amplify that fear. Just say, it's, whatever. I got rid of the spirit, or it's gone, or whatever. But don't feed into it. Don't power that fear. And then all the activity in that house stopped.
Mm-hmm. I fully concur. I've seen that. I've talked to people that have had that type of experience, and it's very, very it's very real, and it can be very disconcerting when that happens.
Nikki's saying she's known people who were very negative and ugly per se, and the energy did manifest itself with slamming doors, dark shadowy figures. Okay, it just popped. What we put out into the universe, we get back. Firm believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
And like energy attracts the same energy.
Absolutely.
Travis, are you a minister now, or I believe
I'm not.
Okay.
I am not. I did serve as an ordained minister in the Southern Baptist denomination for several years. I'm still ordained, but I'm not active. I'm not an active minister. No.
Okay, interesting. You got to listen to all the good music, didn't you?
Well, what was ironic was I actually had trained in the Assemblies of God and then ended up in the Southern Baptist. So I got great music from both sides. I got praise and worship and contemporary, and then the great gospel and Southern gospel classics. So,
that's actually really interesting. Do you believe? I've been asking anybody that's been ordained, anybody that's a priest or anything from that type of status. Do you believe that it's possible that people can be possessed by demons or demonic entities?
I do. I believe in both possession and oppression. I believe that individuals can be possessed and forced to do things against their will. I also believe that individuals can face demonic oppression that constantly is battling against their will and causing, not causing things to happen to them, but causing different scenarios to present themselves that are trying to defeat that person spiritually. And I think that happens across denominations. I don't think that possession is something only the Catholic Church can deal with. I believe that it is something that takes place across the board, regardless of religion, regardless of culture, whether it's Judeo-Christian, whether it's Islamic, whether it's Hinduism. I believe that those demonic spirits and entities do exist, and that they can force themselves into a vessel.
Right. You know, it was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a Christian minister who sent me a message saying that he does exorcisms and performs blessings and stuff like that. He was a Christian minister, and I never in my life ever heard of a Christian minister that will perform an exorcism ever. I've always heard just Catholics do it, and it could just be the area that I live in or whatever, but I was just so intrigued by that, so I sent him a couple messages, and it's just good to hear that, you know, there are so many Christians, and please, you know, it's not, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but a lot of Christians just do not believe that people can be possessed by demons or such, like, you know, they believe that you can be influenced by evil, but cannot be possessed by evil.
Well,
and
you're absolutely right. And it's actually, I find very ironic when you start talking to the greater Christian realm. They want to believe in God and angels and life after death, and they believe in Satan and the devil as a theory. But when you start talking to them about demons and demonic possession and hauntings and poltergeist and and these, and then they want to automatically shut you out. When actually, the Christian Bible is full of examples of ghosts and demonic possessions and demonic influences, and and I've always used this, even when Jesus of Nazareth was walking on the water towards his disciples in the middle of that storm, their first thought was that it was a ghost. That was the very first thing out of their mouth. So obviously, this concept of ghosts and spirits has been around a lot longer than just the past couple of centuries. And it was something that was accepted and was widely believed and has been widely held for countless millennia. And my client, Bill Bean, author of Dark Forest and Delivered, Bill, besides being an author, is a deliverance minister. People will fly Bill all over this country to come and perform exorcisms and blessings on their homes and on their families when they are finding themselves under demonic attack.
Have you ever performed an exorcism or been present during near somebody who was possessed?
I have never performed an exorcism, I've never been present during one. I have performed a blessing on a home that was experiencing unusual activity.
Okay.
And I did perform a series of rituals and prayers and blessings on this particular home. But as far as a demonic exorcism, I have never been involved in one, nor have I actually seen one. I know individuals who have. I've got countless friends who are still ministers and pastors that have claimed to have done them, but I've just never been present during one.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, I have never, looking back at all the cases that I've done, I can honestly, I'm pretty sure that I've never ran across a demonic case. I've ran across hauntings where there were some negative entities in a home, but nothing that could be categorized as a true, demon, which actually, thank God, I as a paranormal investigator, it's bound to happen at some point that you're going to run into something like that, and luckily, though, I know other priests and ministers that I could turn to or call to help if I ever run into something like that.
You guys are getting me ready to go watch The Conjuring tomorrow night, aren't you?
Hey, I'll tell you,
me all anxiety-ridden.
I plan on going Friday night myself. So
awesome. It should be good.
You know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to go and see it tomorrow. However, I will be seeing it this week for sure. Of course, Travis, I'm sure you know that we had Andrea on the show. It had to have been like a month or so ago, and she was telling us her experiences and the true story, which of course, is going to be different than the movie,
right?
But is very interesting, and she was also stating that farmhouse was also a portal as well. It's just crazy. I've never really done a whole lot of research into vortexes or portals or what have you, but just from what I have heard, I would assume a portal or something like that would form because of maybe traumatic events that seems to repeat itself in a certain location. Just energy just builds up, and then boom, you have a portal.
Right. Well, Bill Bean's story is very similar to the Amityville and to Andrea's story. His family suffered a great deal of trauma and tragedy at the hands of. Bill will tell you a couple of demonic entities, not spirits, but demonic entities in the home. And Bill believes with all of his heart, after talking to family members, that there were individuals in his family in years before this started that had opened a portal for these demonic entities that latched themselves onto this particular piece of property. And even to this day, this is 2013, the events ended in 1979, Bill has refused to ever go back to that piece of property in Glen Burnie, Maryland. He has been offered money by different film crews, by different TV programs to go spend a weekend with them filming, with them talking to him, and Bill still refuses to go back because of the trauma that he endured as a young, 13-year-old boy when he actually did battle with these demonic entities himself.
Yeah, Andrea was saying that there were members of her family that just will not return to that farmhouse, and I got to talk to Lorraine Warren sometime because I would love to ask her if she would ever go back to that house. Mm-hmm. Because just from what Andrea has said and just looking at the previews of the movie, it looks like she went through something that was just so traumatic. I don't even think that she would return to that place, and she's been through, more stuff than probably any of us.
Absolutely.
It took them 30 years to come out, so yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. There's just some things that are just so traumatic, Like, I don't know. If that were to happen to me, if I would have lived in that house, I mean, I don't know if I would even go back there. It's just like going back to the, sightings where Mothman was. If I would have saw that back then, I'd probably be feeling the same way, falling off in the back of the car, getting all freaked out. And this is coming from a paranormal investigator. You see something that should, in your mind, should not exist, or can, just from what life teaches you or what people tell you in everyday life, that things like that don't exist, and then all of a sudden there it is standing in front of you. It just, your mind just kind of shuts down.
Now, doesn't Vanjie want to go back to Bill Bean's house and check that out? And you've threatened her within an inch of her life, yeah?
She does. I jokingly told Bill, I said, the next time you get an offer, if the dollar amount is right, I will go spend the weekend in the house for you with Charlie and the camera crew, and then we can split the money. But Vanjie does. Vanjie wants to go and to do a reading. She wants to experience what Bill experienced. So I think for her that would be a very interesting evening for her to go back there and do that. And she may get the chance. I don't know.
You better have a lot of cameras going if that happens.
Well, we definitely can. We've got enough of them. We can keep them rolling for a while.
Good deal.
Okay, so anybody in chat, anybody that's listening to the broadcast, if you want to call in, if you have any questions, please go ahead and call in. I'm sure Wendy's got the call-in number.
646-716-6207.
Please feel free to call in at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next?
Nikki's phone is charging right now.
So, Travis, what's next for you? What do you got going? What are you working on next? Like, what do you see yourself doing within the next few years?
Well, from a documentary film perspective, we've got several projects that are in pre-production that we're looking at. Of course, the first sequel to Dark Wings, which we've titled Dark Wings: The Dark Messenger, which looks at the religious and the spiritual implications of these winged entities, which it's really, that documentary is based on my lectures that I've given for 4 years at the Mothman Festival on Sundays, talking about the religious implications of the Mothman sightings and the Men in Black and all of these things that were happening in the town of Point Pleasant. We're also looking at a documentary going back to West Virginia, a different part of West Virginia, but back in the early to mid-'50s, a series of unsolved murders that are attributed to the Mad Butcher of West Virginia, which very much mimic the Black Dahlia murders and the Torso murders in Cincinnati, Ohio, back around the same time frame. And then we're also looking at going to East Texas and doing 2 documentaries there, one on the Falk Monster, which was the basis for the Legend of Boggy Creek, the great drive-in movie from the 1970s, but does have a basis in a real story, and also another movie from the 1970s called The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and it was about, again, a series of unsolved murders that took place in this little town. So we're looking at going there and talking with the town about doing those 2 documentaries on those actual events and talking to as many of the original eyewitnesses as we possibly can. That's Black River Films. From Aspire Communications, we have a lot of things going on with our clients and what's going on. Most notably, of course, Bill Bean right now with moving forward with the optioning of his book for a film, and then also a documentary based on his own story. And then he's got a lot of events coming up. He's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky at the Mid-South Paranormal Convention in August. He's at Parafest in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania the first weekend in September. He's at the Mothman Festival the third weekend in September. The last weekend in September, he's going to be in Eaton, Georgia, at the Eaton Pumpkin Festival, being hosted, or he will be the guest of the North Georgia Paranormal Group. He'll be lecturing, speaking, and signing books. And then October 16th through the 19th, we will be in Las Vegas for the Beyond Expo in Las Vegas, which is a fundraising event for the Bill and Deanne Bell Foundation. They are raising money to build a college for individuals that have physical disabilities, and they've asked Bill to come and be one of their celebrity guests. So we've got that and a lot of other things. We represent clients in the paranormal, but we also represent a lot of authors, a lot of emerging businesses, entrepreneurs that are trying to establish and further develop the brand image that they have created or they've hired us to help them create. So we stay busy on a regular basis.
Very nice.
Sounds like you guys are just busy.
We my day typically ends around 3 a.m. and starts around 8 a.m. So
yeah.
Wow.
It's a busy time.
Mhm. Yeah, I see you on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, we're always doing some things. We've got a great client out of eastern West Virginia. Her name is Sandy Peters. She's a psychic and medium and has been training with the mentor of John Edwards. She was one of 20 psychic mediums that this mentor chose and been working with her, helping her further hone and develop her abilities and training in her certain curriculum. She's done a couple of major interviews in the past couple of weeks. Of course, Angie Williams, who is one of our authors, but also has, her interesting slant is she's a paragenealogist, which means she is a genealogist, but she has a certain psychic ability that she incorporates when she's doing her genealogical research.
She's also on the phone with us right now, I believe. Angie, is that you?
All right.
It is me.
Hello,
Hey, babe.
good evening.
Hey, I just happened to tune in and I heard my name. I'm like, wow, I'm being discussed. How awesome is that?
Well, I got to talk about you.
Well, sure.
I missed the show tonight.
Yeah.
But I want to say Travis is an awesome agent because I think majority of us, some kind of way, have a gift that Travis appreciates and he promotes, and it's not cheesy. You know, we are all super talented. I mean, hey, I don't know when he sleeps. If people talk about me, I don't know when he sleeps. Not at night, apparently.
It depends on the day of the week. Sometimes I get to sleep, sometimes not always. It just depends.
Yeah, we've heard it all. But you guys having a great show. I just wanted to say hi. I'm listening in. Continue the great work.
Great,
well,
thanks,
for calling
Angie.
in. And I appreciate what Angie said. You know, I do. You know, I am about promotion and publicity, but I do really try to be sensitive to the clients and not be cheesy and pitch them in a way that is going to be sensational or degrading to their talents or their particular standing in society.
It's not a hurry, we've got this. I appreciate your take on it and your position. It's very nice and refreshing.
Well, I think that, as Angie's, you know, the title or the name of our company, Aspire, really says it all. We want to help individuals reach the goals and the status to which they aspire. Mm-hmm. We have our own aspirations as a company. We know what we want to be. We know what we want to do. We pride ourselves in representing individuals that are having a problem finding representation because they don't have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to spend in their publicity. So our approach is to tailor what we do for them in a way that will be beneficial to them, beneficial to us, and we form long-term partnerships and long-lasting relationships and goals and objectives that want to be achieved.
Very nice. Okay, I don't...
Real positive environment.
And what I love about our clients is, and Vanjie has been one of the individuals to spearhead this, our clients promote one another. It's not just me promoting them. But if something happens for one of my clients, then the other clients are going to pick it up and they're going to run with it on their social media, even if it's not the genre. You know, I've got clients that aren't paranormal. I've got clients that I've got a relationship guru and what I call a sexpert out of Phoenix, Arizona, Jody Ambrose. She's an amazing individual, and she has 2 books: Sex, How to Get More of It for Guys, and Intimacy, How to Get More of It for Women. And they're great how-to guides to build a strong relationship. But guess what? When something happens for Bill Bean or something happens for Vanjie or for Sandy Peters, she'll start promoting that through her social media sites, which is a total demographic that these people in the paranormal vein may not reach if it hadn't been for them cross-promoting one another. And we foster that within Aspire. We want people to cross-promote. We want to help everyone be as successful as they possibly can be.
Right. That's how we are with the radio show and with pretty much anything that my group does. We'll promote other groups. We'll promote other shows. It's just about helping each other and getting the material out there.
Which unfortunately is very rare in the paranormal community. And I say that being in it. I've been in it since 2003, literally when we started doing the Mothman documentary. I've worked with a lot of paranormal groups, and there's so much tension and contention between the groups sometimes. It's refreshing to find individuals that will help promote other individuals and their efforts. I work with Lee Allen and his group Paravisions out of Cincinnati, and he's doing the same thing. Their group thrives on trying to promote para-unity, creating this sense of unity unity and synergy in the paranormal field. And quite frankly, I think if the paranormal field, and this is me, and I'm on a soapbox right now, so I apologize, but this is me from a consulting standpoint too. If the paranormal field is going to survive and is going to actually be recognized with credibility, the backbiting and the contention is going to have to stop.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree.
And it's going to have to be cohesive and work together.
I mean, it's perfectly fine if you don't agree with something, but to argue or to call someone, a liar or it's just so many paranormal groups. I've met paranormal groups that'll shun every other group they run across.
Absolutely.
And I just don't understand that. I just don't. Even if you don't agree with another group's methods, you're still learning from that group. Mm-hmm. Whether you use their methods or not, you're learning about their methods.
Well, and so what I find ironic is that's what the paranormal field is supposed to be about, open-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all theoretical and,
exactly.
Until the fat lady sings, basically.
Exactly. Be open-minded. Mm-hmm. Be receptive. Don't close your mind to possibilities. I can talk. When we were working on the Mothman documentary, between Charlie McCracken, Matthew Fleming, and myself, we had 3 different theories as to what we were dealing with. It never comes out in that first documentary, but behind the scenes, we had 3 different theories. Matthew Fleming held to the fact that Mothman was some type of environmental mutation because of the chemicals that were being stored at the TNT area. Charlie felt it was some type of entity that was manifesting itself, whether it be energy, whether it be some type of psychic projection, whatever. I had a demonic theory. We worked on that movie for 6 years together, and we never fought because we simply accepted the fact. Because guess what? We didn't see Mothman. We didn't get to interview Mothman. We didn't get to photograph Mothman. So guess what? Until that happens, everything else is just a theory.
Yep.
Right.
It's up in the air, and it is up for negotiation and debate and dialogue, but not argument, because it's not worth arguing and losing friendships and losing credibility because someone doesn't agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Nikki is asking, she got it in a little bit late. She has a new puppy, so she was busy. But she's asking if any of the people involved with Mothman experienced any time lapses, bright lights, and she once again is apologizing and says it was a long time ago when she watched and read Mothman.
When you talk about the Mothman Prophecies, the movie, while it was an excellent film, I love it, I own it, I watch it on a regular basis. It's like a 2-hour X-File, and it's just it keeps you on the edge of your seat. But really, they take and they mix 2 different things that were going on in West Virginia. You had Mothman, who was appearing in Point Pleasant. And then in Mineral Springs, West Virginia, you had another entity manifesting itself that called itself Indrid Cold, which very much has the earmarkings of a quote-unquote extraterrestrial visitation. This was an entity that was manifesting. There were other entities manifesting themselves there. There was an individual called Apple. There was a Princess Leia that were claiming to come from different dimensions and different planets. And in so doing, some individuals saw bright lights. Some individuals, Woodward Ehrenberger most prominently in the story of Indrid Cold, would lose time, claim to be taken to this other planet and see this great utopia that was there and then being brought back to Earth. And so there were a lot of similar paranormal and supernatural events that were going on in and around this area. In Point Pleasant, from the eyewitnesses that we interviewed, and I stress that we interviewed, we never had anyone that lost time or saw bright lights or anything like that.
Okay.
That'd be a little disappointing for me if I went there to try to figure out what's going on, if I were to conduct an investigation. Well, then again, I don't know. From an investigative standing point, I guess it really wouldn't matter either way. Whatever happens, happens. But from a personal standing point, man, I'd be a little depressed if I took a trip all the way out there and I didn't experience it. Because, I mean, you think about it, there are just so many people that experience something out there. You know, you would think that you'd be more likely to experience something because of all the reports and all the sightings.
You know, absolutely. You know, we had, while we were there, like I said, we never saw Mothman. We never had any sightings. We did have some very interesting encounters while we were there. Well, we were at the TNT area one October, early in October. We stumbled upon a deer carcass, and they're not unusual. You know, this is rural West Virginia. You have hunters and things like that. But what was very unusual was the deer itself was on one side of the road, but it had been skinned and gutted, and the skin and the guts were on the other side of the road.
Oh, nice, just as I was taking a drink.
At least you weren't
eating.
True.
I mean, the first thing I would think of is that maybe somebody was performing some kind of ritual.
Exactly. That was what we thought. And then when you're out there and it's, you know, early dusk and you see this and you're like, well, you know, okay, it could be a ritual. It could also have been that, you know, maybe Mothman was hungry. And maybe something came along and startled him. He didn't get to finish, and he may come back. Let's get the hell out of here. You know, It's one of those kinds of things, you know. And then probably the year before, in August, we were in the TNT area. And one of the reasons that the TNT area was so popular with teenagers in the 60s was that it has one of the straightest, flattest roads probably in the state of West Virginia. This road is just, it's like a drag strip heaven, and that's what they would do. They would go out and they would hot rod race on this road. And we literally, you drive the road and you come to the end of it, it's a T intersection. You can go right or you can go left. Either road will take you further into the TNT area. One just takes you, you know, a different direction. We stopped at the T intersection. It was Matthew Fleming, Charlie McCracken, and myself. We were in the car. Windows rolled up, air conditioner on, radio turned up. We were listening to music. We were talking. And somewhere from inside the TNT area, this was midday, too. This was not nighttime. This was midday. There was the most ungodly growl, yell, screech, howl. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It was not man-made, but it was not like any sound I've ever heard an animal make. I've grown up in the mountains of Virginia my entire life. I've never heard a sound like this. Literally reverberated through the vehicle, above the air conditioner, above the radio, and literally all three of us just kind of looked at each other and said, what the hell was that? Oh, and the hair on the backs of our neck and the backs of our arms standing straight up. Just it went for 5-6 seconds, just this non-stop guttural sound, and then stopped.
Did you guys get out and investigate?
No, we drove to the liquor store and bought a bottle of scotch.
You know what? That's a good idea too.
And went back to our hotel room, and we did shots talking about what we had heard. That's exactly what we did. Told you, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm a paranormal journalist. I chronicle what happens. I don't go looking for it.
Oh, man, that's just hilarious. Man, what was that? That was nuts. Well, let's go to the liquor store and hell with it.
Exactly. It's like, let's go. So we drove in. We got a bottle of scotch. Seriously, I say that jokingly, but it did. I mean, you're talking about three grown men. Matthew Fleming, Department of Corrections, licensed to carry a firearm. He carries a firearm wherever he goes. Charlie McCracken is 6'7", big guy. I'm 6'2". I clock in at like 215, 225. We are not, we're not winklings. We're not wimps. We don't scare easily. This literally rattled us. And we did. We drove back into Point Pleasant. We went to the liquor store. We got a bottle of scotch. We went back to the hotel room. We sat around and literally tried to come up with what we had heard. What animal in the wild makes that kind of sound? And literally and Matthew Fleming is an avid hunter, has been for many years. Charlie is very well educated in all types of different types of scientific knowledge and experiments and research, and none of us could come up with anything. And it literally was one of the most terrifying events when we were in the town of Point Pleasant. Not the most, but one of the most.
It was probably Mothman. He was probably saying, "Get the hell out of here" or something.
Well, we have theorized. I mean, one of my good friends and a client is L.A. Marzulli, and L.A. Marzulli is the author of the Nephilim trilogy, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, the Alien Interviews. And L.A. and I actually met one another very early in the documentary process for the Mothman. L.A. had been on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie talking about the Nephilim, and the Nephilim are the offspring of fallen angels and human women. And even in the writings of Josephus, when he talks about the history of the Nephilim, there's a few things that characterize the Nephilim. One is their height, typically over 7 feet tall. Another thing is that they have 6 digits on their hands and their feet, so 6 fingers, 6 toes. Another characteristic is a foul stench, the smell of sulfur. And the fourth characteristic is that they are often known to emit these earth-shattering, nerve-wracking howls of horror and fear that literally would, according to Josephus, literally stop armies in their tracks and have them turn and run away. So, again, playing into my theory of a demonic manifestation, I very much believe that that's what we heard. I believe that we heard the Mothman entity. I'm not going to go as far as, say, trying to communicate with us as much as he was trying to scare us off and have us stop.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Oh. Woohoo! Let's go get another bottle.
Yeah.
Trust me, there were times in the town of Point Pleasant. Like I said, I mean, on the outskirts of Point Pleasant, there was also a building that we had seen several times. It sat out in the middle of this field. It was a 4-story brick building, massive structure, overgrown with kudzu and ivy, and windows broken out, and just very ominous looking. And we decided one day to go in and look at it. And we got there and we went in, and I swear to you, it was the most active haunted location I've ever set foot in. I mean, literally within minutes of walking in the hallway, there were dramatic drops in temperature. There were the sounds of groans and voices. Doors were opening and closing by themselves. There were the sounds of footsteps running overhead. We got all of it on video, and we started researching, and the place was actually the Lake and State Mental Hospital, and it had been both an orphanage and an insane asylum. And it actually was on the register for the state of West Virginia as one of the most haunted locations, and it was home to a particular doctor who was prone to do unsanctioned ice pick lobotomies on the boys that were there.
Oh, dear God.
And in so doing, many of them died and were buried in unmarked graves all over the property. And we were there several times, and the massive amounts of negative energy that we encountered at that location. There was a gray man there, as I mentioned. There was, doors opening and closing, footsteps running, and we were the only people there. And this building sat out on a piece of land. There were no power lines. There was no form, really no way for any type of interference, but your cell phone would go haywire when you walked into this building. We carried walkie-talkies with us. They would start going off and running through the channels and squawking and screeching and all those things just by being there.
Really?
Really.
Man, that's a place I want to go to.
Well, and unfortunately, here's the problem. We went back in 2009. The land had been bought by AEP, American Electric Power, and they razed the building. It is no longer there.
Really?
They literally demolished it. But I will tell you this, and Charlie McCracken and Matthew Fleming will testify this, that piece of land shows no signs of having been demolished. It looks like a pristine piece of real estate. They went to a great deal of trouble to not only demolish that building, to make it look like that building had never sat on that piece of property.
Really?
But I will also guarantee you this, they did not remove the unmarked graves. I guarantee you those are still there.
Oh, yeah. And probably a lot of the entities as well.
Absolutely. I do not think removing it did anything.
No, just got rid of the old building.
Did they set another building down there?
Nope. It was totally vacant. Now, I haven't been back since 2009. In 2009, it was totally vacant.
Okay, so basically they bought it just to demolish it?
That is the understanding, yes.
Huh. I'd still like to go there.
Not me.
Stand out.
That's pretty incredible.
It was amazing. We actually have enough footage from our times there, and enough historical information. We're looking at doing a mini documentary on that particular location, just based on the history that we've been able to find and the things that happened while we were there. So
I'd do it, but I'd go back there another time while
demolished, and I would
conduct an investigation there with the gun to see if that could be a big
Justin, come back to the Justin. Talk into the mic. Talk into the mouthpiece. That's okay.
I have talked into the mic. Anyway, I would go back there again, and I would see what I could find, and then I would definitely do a documentary on that place. It sounds amazing.
Well, it had a very interesting history. Originally, it had actually been founded as the Lakin State Hospital for the Criminally Insane Colored Boy. That's actually what still was etched on the front of the building.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It had a very sordid past.
Well, yeah, with that doctor and all.
Exactly, but historically fascinating.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. A lot like Christopher St. Booth and his Trail of Tears.
Exactly,
and
yes.
all of that. Oh, heavens. Well.
So, where are some other haunted locations you've been to?
Oh, let's see. The location there in Point Pleasant, the most active. We have investigated. There's a location in Tennessee called Sensabaugh Tunnel, which dates back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. Supposedly a kind of an itinerant worker who was staying with a family that owned a farm, ended up killing either the wife and child or some different variations of the story. Supposedly, if you go in the tunnel and stand there, you can hear screams, and we've investigated that and been there on several occasions. Charlie McCracken and I did a series of filmings in Denver, Colorado, actually, at a cabin that was haunted. Families had a relative that had asked the family to take him to their cabin while he tried to dry out from alcoholism, and apparently while there he started going through DTs and withdrawals and decided to walk to a local convenience store to buy some beer, but it was in early winter. He ended up falling, passing out, something. He ended up drowning in a river, and his spirit was still active at the location. So Charlie actually took two psychic mediums and a sensitive to that location. We did an entire investigation, and they were able to sit down with the family and talk to them about the relative that had passed and to help that individual pass on to the next life. As far as weird locations, I've been to Area 51 on 3 occasions.
What's that place like?
It's interesting. There's a huge sign when you get so far that says, violators will either be shot or charged $5,000 for trespassing. Being the type of person that I am, go ahead and shoot me because you're not going to get $5,000 out of me.
Yep.
Right.
It's very interesting, though. I mean, we have seen some interesting things out there. We've been chased away by the security guards in the Jeeps. We have seen the the little pods that pop up out of the desert that are, video cameras and motion sensors and smelled, all the different things that they're claimed to be. It's Rachel, Nevada is actually a very interesting town. If anyone ever gets to Las Vegas, I encourage you, take the drive up to Rachel, Nevada. It's about 90 miles, and it is a beautiful desert drive, but you get to Rachel, Nevada, and literally there is one brick-and-mortar structure in the entire town, and that's the Little Alien Inn, which is this little hotel and restaurant. Great food, cold drinks, lots of souvenirs, but the town is basically trailers and one giant wigwam. There is one huge wigwam that stands in the middle. But it's actually very funny because there is this huge monument in Rachel, Nevada, because when the movie Independence Day came out, the movie studio actually took a huge screen to Rachel, Nevada, and did the screening of the film there. So they put this huge monument in town that this was the location where they screened Independence Day.
That's cool.
Funny story. We were at the Little Alien one night, very first trip there, and I walked into the men's room. And while I was washing my hands, all of a sudden, out of the bathroom window, it had been total darkness. All of a sudden, all of these different lights start going off, red and blue and yellow, and they're like flashing and strobing and everything. And literally, I was freaking out. And I walk out, and I, look at Charlie, and I'm like, okay, I saw something weird in the bathroom. He's like, okay. So we walk outside, and what we had neglected to notice was that to the left of the entrance, there was this it was dark, of course, there was this giant UFO as part of the monument. And at a certain time at night, they turn these strobe lights onto this thing, so it starts going off. And the lights just run the circumference of the UFO. So it was one of those things that was like, I got scared to death and then laughed my butt off at myself, not quite as much as Charlie was laughing at me, but definitely was laughing.
Oh, well, if you can't laugh at yourself, you got to look to your best friend to do it for you.
Oh, my best friend tells all kinds of stories and laughs at me like nobody's business.
Oh, you got to keep a sense of humor, though, or you'll go crazy.
We've been together too long, almost 20 years now. So.
He knows where all the bodies are buried.
He knows all the skeletons in the closet. He knows where the closet is, and he knows the combination on the lock. So.
That's definitely somebody you got to watch out for.
Absolutely. He gets lots of presents. Every holiday, his birthday, you take good care of him. We try to stay on a good speaking term.
Good
yes,
idea.
I'd probably be doing about the same thing. So.
So what drew you to the paranormal? Was there a specific turning point, or just were you always curious about it?
I wish I could, draw this great story of something that had happened to me when I was a child that interested me in the paranormal and the supernatural, but it really wasn't. It was actually a lot simpler than that. When I was a kid, my dad was a coal miner, and he worked a lot of evening shifts, and that meant he went into work around 3 o'clock and he got home around midnight. And on Friday nights, it became kind of this tradition that he would come home on Friday nights, and he and I would fix a snack, and we would sit down and we would watch reruns of Kolchak the Night Stalker with Darren McGavin.
Oh.
One of my favorite TV shows. I own every episode on DVD. And for those that don't know, Kolchak the Night Stalker was the precursor to all paranormal supernatural shows. It was actually what inspired Chris Carter to create the X-Files. It's about a news reporter who works for a legitimate news organization, but every story that he investigates always ends up with some type of paranormal or supernatural component. And I was fascinated by the fact that somebody could start out investigating something as mundane as a new fashion line of clothing that all of a sudden would turn out to involve witchcraft and the occult and the supernatural. And that really got me interested in those types of things. And then that was the late 70s and early 80s, and through the 80s I became really interested in the UFO phenomena. The Bermuda Triangle is one of my passions. I love researching it, trying to understand what's been going on there. UFO conspiracies, the government cover-ups, all of those things just became kind of a fascination. Roswell is one of my favorite things to research and discuss and talk about. as early, as far back as 1993, when I was in college, I was, researching Roswell and talking about it and trying to understand what it was that took place there. So it really was just kind of something that was presented to me literally from an entertainment perspective, but it sparked a passion within me, and it has been ever since.
Very nice. I kind of feel like that's my story as well. Just not real sure where it all started, but always been curious, tried to be open-minded, but it scares the living daylights out of me, so as well. So not anything I've jumped feet first into.
Yeah, people have asked me, have I had any type of supernatural or paranormal, instances? And really, there were only two before going to Point Pleasant. One of those, I was a child, and I do remember very distinctly being in the back seat of my parents' car, and we were driving a winding country, mountain road, and looking out the window and seeing something in the sky that, was definitely a UFO. It was something that could not be literally categorized or described. It was glowing. It was very oddly shaped. It was moving at, unusual speeds and moving in different directions that you would not typically see an aircraft move in. And then between 1998 and 2003, Charlie McCracken and I, we ran an advertising agency and a PR firm, and we were situated on the top floor of a building. And I had some experiences there, seeing shadow figures and just various things. And we actually, when we started talking to the landlord, discovered that the building had been, at the turn of the 20th century, had been a hospital. And the basement had been the morgue, and the rooms that we were now occupying as offices have actually been hospital rooms. So it was one of those things that, those are the only experiences that I had in my life that would be considered paranormal or supernatural.
We've got Nikki saying that when she was started at 4 years old, she had a ghost cat come in, and it stayed with her until she was almost 20 years old.
Wow.
A ghost cat?
Ghost cat.
That'd be nice.
Cindy had shadow people that visited her a lot.
It would have to be a ghost cat because real cats won't stick around that long.
That's true, yes.
If you had a ghost cat, you wouldn't have to change a litter box. You wouldn't have to feed it. It'd be like a perfect animal, right? Man, where do I get one?
That's the ideal pet right there.
Ooh, Pet Cemetery.
Ooh, that movie terrified me.
Yeah, it scared the crap
me
out of
too.
me.
Oh, yeah. I think it even scared Stephen King.
I think
he
so.
Is the scary.
Yes, he is.
Mm-hmm.
Between that and it,
God.
Oh, I know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
I
afraid
worked
of
construction
because of that.
Yeah, and manholes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was one of those movies that just literally kind of pushes you over the edge. I mean, even now, I'm almost 40 years old, and I still don't like it when I see Pennywise in a photograph or anything else.
Exactly.
No, thank you.
Nope. I had to work a graveyard shift and be on a mechanical watch duty. And I was a second-year apprentice in the pipe fitters. And, it got to be about 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm doing everything I can do to stay awake. And every time I had to go look into that manhole and make sure the pump was functioning right, it was everything I could do to get out of the truck and go do that. I had to stop reading Stephen King at that point.
It was funny. In 92 and 93, that's when I started out in broadcasting, and I started out as a DJ at an AM/FM radio station in my hometown. And I was working the Saturday, Sunday weekend shift, so I was getting into the radio station around 4 o'clock in the morning and getting everything ready to go live at 6 a.m. And I remember I was reading The Exorcist, and so I was sitting in the reception area on the couch. Actually, I was laying on the couch because it was, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was still tired. And I was like 16 years old, so I'd obviously been out Friday night and was totally exhausted. And I remember laying there and reading The Exorcist and hearing, just what would be regular noises if you weren't reading The Exorcist. But if you're reading The Exorcist, everything becomes demonic. And especially when you're all alone, it's still dark outside, and you're in a building that you're not familiar with, and there's no one around you, and there's no one there, and so you start hearing everything, and you start tiptoeing through the radio station trying to figure out what you're hearing and what's going on. And it's amazing the little things that do kind of elicit that type of primal response within us.
We have a caller. I believe it's Nikki.
Yeah, it is me.
Yay!
Well, I just want to explain the, hold on, I got to turn down my volume on the computer. Okay, so I just want to explain the cat thing. I remember, it's like clear as day. My mother put me to bed, and we had, at the time, 14 cats. 12 of them kittens. So I go to bed this night, and I feel something jump up on my bed, and I think, oh, yay, there's a kitty in the room with me. And I'm waiting for it to come up, and it doesn't, and I'm like, what the heck? And I remember feeling around on my blankets, and I don't feel a cat. I turned my light on. There's no kitty there. I looked under my bed. My mother got mad at me, and this continued. I mean, at least I was, I think, 21 years of age when it finally stopped. And it was just the weirdest thing. I've never experienced anything like that. So I say it's a ghost cat.
I find that interesting because, it obviously was also a very, it seems like it was a comforting presence.
Oh, it was when I was little, when I was a little girl and I was oblivious to the world and everything. It didn't bother me, but as I got older and I started to realize, okay, things die, people die, there are spirits, there's heaven or hell, whatever have you, it started to bother me. And
sure, you learned to be afraid of it.
The last time it happened, my son Sean, I think, was like 6 months old, and I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden, I feel this pounce, and we had no pets, and I feel this pounce up onto the bed, and I'm like, oh my God, and I pulled the covers up over my head, and it walked up, whatever, kitty cat, whatever, it walked up. It did the little kneading thing that cats do, and it laid down. And I was petrified. I couldn't move.
Oh.
But that was the last time that I ever experienced it. It hasn't happened since. And I guess I've just always been trying to figure out exactly what it is, why it was there, why it went on for so long. It never hurt me, I guess it was like a kitty, so, but...
Well, I had, in 2010, I moved into an apartment in my hometown, and I say it's an apartment. It was actually the top floor of the Main Street Hardware Company, and the owner of that hardware company had remodeled the top floor. And one other person had rented it out besides me, and I rented it out. It's a huge, huge apartment, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, a dining room, a huge living room, a huge deck on the back of the building. And when I stayed there, I got hints of some type of presence, that there was something there. There would be noises, I would turn a light off, I would leave, and come back, the light would be on. Different things would happen. And it wasn't until I got very sick with a stomach virus over the course of a couple of days that the manifestation actually became more physical. And it was one of those things, I was laying in bed, I was awake, fully awake. I wasn't delusional or, raging fever or anything like that. I just wasn't feeling well. And I remember lying there and feeling as if someone sat down in the bed, and then literally feeling someone caress my forehead and brush my arm.
Oh, my goodness.
and just it was a very comforting, very nurturing type of presence. And honestly, it had to have been female, because it wasn't until that some females started spending the night that it became angry, and there would be outbursts of a voice yelling, "Get out," or something like that. So I can see where you're coming from with, you know, it was both positive and negative. It obviously had a very comforting, nurturing outlook towards me, but there were certain things that would set it off and make it much more aggressive and much more negative.
I think, you know, even after you pass on, you're still temperamental. You know, you cling to things. I think there are certain, you know, people, spirits, what have you, that, you know, they do still cling, you know, to this earth, and I can't understand why, when, you know, I really want to think that, you know, your reward is just so much better than what this earth has to offer.
Thank you again, Travis, for joining us tonight. It's definitely interesting to hear about Mothman and you know, and all of your experiences as well. It truly was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No, thank you guys so much. It has been a blast. I don't know the last time that 2 hours has gone by so quickly.
All right. Well, everybody have a great night, and we'll talk to you next time in the shadows.